I wanted to make this video for two reasons. The first reason is that Vagabond is my second favorite thing I've ever read, if not my favorite thing I've ever read. The second reason is that about a little over a year ago on TikTok, I made a video where I said that after reading the first 21 chapters of Vagabond, it was better than 90% of the things that I had read at the time. And for some reason, a lot of people called me out on that. They said like, you're lying, you're looking for attention, or whatever else. And so it was at that moment that I decided that at some point in my life, I was going to review Vagabond. I felt like I couldn't really do it there, being that TikTok is short form content, and I wouldn't really be able to give it the time and love that I felt like the series deserved. And so that's what this video is. I have no idea how it's gonna go. It's my first ever YouTube video, so to be honest, I'm just gonna spew my thoughts at the camera, whatever I wrote down about how I feel about it, the things about it that I think are great, and we're just gonna see how this goes. Now, being that this is a review, there will obviously be spoilers. So if you have not read Vagabond, but you are going to soon and you don't want to be spoiled, then this video probably isn't for you. However, I would like to say that I am only covering the first 21 chapters of the series. And so maybe if you're someone who's on the fence and you're thinking about reading it and you're not entirely sure, I think that this video could be a good way for you to decide that. The chapter opens up at the end of a large-scale battle named the Battle of Sekigahara. In this battle, we're introduced to our two main characters, Takezo and Matahachi. They both survive this battle, however, Matahachi is seriously injured, and so the two of them are looking for refuge, trying to find a nearby village to recover from the battle. The first chapter is arguably the most important chapter when it comes to setting up for your characters and your world or the story that you're trying to create. And when it comes to the characters, I think that Inoue does this almost perfectly. In this chapter, the differences and dynamics between Matahachi and Takezo are demonstrated in a lot of ways, and they're demonstrated really, really well. The first and most obvious is that there is a very, very clear difference in strength, with Takezo being stronger than Matahachi. In one of the opening scenes, we see that they're ambushed by samurai, I think remnants from the last battle, and while Matahachi tries to flee and run away, we see Takezo using everything in his environment to fight back, from sticks to throwing big ass rocks at people's skulls. He's doing whatever he can to survive. Granted, Matahachi is injured, but something tells me that I know that if Takezo was injured and in that same situation, he still would have stood his ground and fought. This leads to their next distinction that I want to talk about, which is their mental fortitude. They both came and joined the Battle of Sekigahara wanting to make a name for themselves, to take a general's head or somebody important to show that they're strong and show their prowess and just have their name ring bells. However, when that failed and they lost the battle, Matahachi was ready to just lay down and die to his injuries, and he was just ready to give up. It was only until Matahachi saw Takezo's resolve that Matahachi had the determination to be able to keep going, even though he did pass out the next panel. I think this does a great way of demonstrating how Matahachi uses Takezo as a crutch for his own lack of strength and his own lack of ambition. Throughout these next few chapters, we meet two more characters. We meet Oko and we meet Akemi. Akemi is the one who saved Matahachi and Takezo from the battlefield and brought them to their home. The reason that Akemi was able to find them is because those two, Oko and Akemi, are thieves who, after battles, they go to the battlefield and they find weapons. They bring them back to their home to resell them. Throughout these chapters, we see Oko eyeballing Takezo. She's trying to get a piece of him. They're drinking sake, she's leaning all up on him, and he just don't want no parts of it. Even when she gets real direct with him, he's just still not with it, which is crazy to me in my head, but whatever. He's gonna do what he's gonna do. And this pretty much sets the tone for further relationships that Takezo has with women, but we're gonna get to that when the time comes. Anyway, this Tsujikaze Kenma dude pulls up, and he's part of the Tsujikaze Gang, and he shows up at Oko's house and he's basically telling Oko to run everything they have. I'm assuming his little gang of bandits needs swords and stuff, and he knows what she does, and so he shows up and he's like, just give me everything. Matahachi and Takezo actually defend Oko's home from the Tsujikaze Gang, which I'm guessing as a show of thanks for their hospitality from picking them from the battlefield and saving their lives. And pretty much as soon as the fight starts, Tsujikaze Kenma, he's a little bitch. He runs as soon as Takezo starts fighting him, and Takezo chases him into the woods and beats his brains in with that wooden stick. And Matahachi actually did something. He actually killed 4 of the Tsujikaze Gang's members, which I honestly didn't expect from him, but he held his ground, and I'll give him his props for that, because that's probably the last time he's ever gonna get any respect from me. And so what's interesting here, what's crazy here rather, is that now that Matahachi got some bodies under his belt, he's feeling like a real man. And what do men do? That's right, they fuck. And so now Matahachi wants some of Oko, right? He's seen the way Oko's been eyeballing, the way she's been filling up Takezo and Matahachi. He wants some of that. And so I get wanting to light a pipe, right? But this weird motherfucker, right? It's pitch black, middle of the night. He sneaks into Oko's room. He creeps his way in there, moves the blanket off of her. He gets butt booty naked. He puts himself like on top of her. And then as he's leaning in for the kiss, then she wakes up, or she was already awake or whatever, but then she goes, "Which one are you?" Now, bro, he's like a deer in headlights. He don't know what to do. He done got flashed bang. He was not expecting this. And so now Matahachi starts regretting his decision, only because he got caught. Crazy. And then to top it all off, the icing on the cake is that he lies and actually says that he's Takezo. Now, Oko calls him out on it, right? She's like, "I know you're you," but she sleeps with him anyway. But that whole sequence of events is crazy, and I think it says a lot about Matahachi's character. And what I mean by that is that he feels inferior to Takezo, and he feels like he's always in his shadow, and so he had this moment to be him, and he did. Anyway, they decide that it's probably time to go back home, although Matahachi is saying he wants to go home. Takezo is actually saying that he wants to. We get this corny ass title drop where he says that he's gonna be a vagabond. And I call it corny because at the time of reading this, I don't know if some of you know what I'm talking about, but there was like the whole trend of using the anime or the manga's title's name, like just title drops like in the middle of places where they didn't fit. And so at the time when I was reading this, that was all I could think about it, and I found it hilarious. And so maybe back when he wrote it was probably like super cool, but and now I don't know, I thought it was corny. Anyway, moving on, we're almost finished up with this section. The Tsujikaze Gang spin the block. They, because they killed Kenma, who was the leader of the group, and so now they're coming back to kill Takezo and Matahachi. So Takezo and Matahachi run back to the house in order to try to save Oko, who they believe is still there. And as we're running, we get a really interesting sequence of Matahachi. Takezo's like dusting him, right? He's running way too fast. And so he's leaving Matahachi behind him. We get this really interesting dialogue of Matahachi thinking about how he does not want to be left behind by Takezo. And this goes back to what I was saying before about when he tried to sleep with Oko, about feeling inferior and feeling in his shadow. And so what's interesting is that as we get there, Takezo just rushes in, right? He doesn't care to like assess the situation or anything. He just runs in fearless. And in contrast, Matahachi is standing out there frozen, trying to build up the courage to run in and to help his friend, even if it is going to be like 2 on 15 or whatever the odds are. And right as he's building up the courage to run in, we actually see Oko made it out of the house, and she finds Matahachi and they have a conversation. And what's crazy is that while Takezo was in there fighting for his life, wondering where his friend is and why his friend didn't follow him in, Matahachi and Oko actually get it cracking right there on the floor of the woods behind a tree, maybe like a couple 10, 20, 30 feet away from the action of where Takezo is fighting for his life, which is, if that's not the definition of L Mans, then I don't know what is, because that was crazy to me. And I think it was at that point I lost all respect for him, and it only gets worse. I already lost respect for him before. The characters can be redeemable, and not anymore, not after this. And it's at this point, and even further, that Matahachi essentially starts going on his way to become one of the top 3 worst characters I've ever had the displeasure of reading. And it's nothing's wrong with his character writing per se, it's just who he is. It's just insufferable. I think I'm gonna start speeding through this a little bit because I don't want this review to be on too long. But we head back to Miyamoto Village where Takezo, he goes by himself. Matahachi actually ended up leaving. I forgot to mention, he had a fiance back home. And so he actually ends up leaving his fiance and doesn't go home in order to end up being with Oko, which I think is it's crazy. So Takezo goes home by himself and he finds Otsu and he tells Otsu what happened. And she's in such a state of distress that she starts biting her hand like she's trying to turn into a titan. It's insane. Matahachi's grandmother doesn't like that Takezo returned without him because she thinks that Takezo dragged him off to war, and how are you going to return without my kid? And so the whole time that Takezo's here at the village, she's plotting to kill him. She wants him dead. And so the grandma sets him up while he's taking a bath. She gets people to come jump him. So now Takezo he's butt booty naked, and he has to fight like another 10, 15 people. And I suppose this is a good time as any to point out the fact that whenever Takezo fights his opponents, they always refer to him as like a beast or a demon or a monster or something of the like. So he obviously, beats the people who are fighting him, even if he is butt booty naked. And as he's making his escape, because he doesn't want, the villagers are also fighting, he doesn't want to hurt his villagers really. And so as he's making his escape, he runs into a monk named Takuan. If I had to describe Takuan in one word, I probably couldn't. If I had to compare him to someone though, if you've ever read Berserk, I would compare him to Skull Knight. And what I mean by that is that he essentially just shows up, drops cryptic bars of knowledge, and then dips. And so he's really interesting in that way, and I really like him. He's one of my favorite characters. So the knowledge that Takuan drops this time wasn't anything too cryptic or too complex. Essentially what he tells Takezo is that because he's always on edge, he's always in survival mode, and he never lets anybody get close, and that he's afraid of people. And it's because of those traits that actually make him the weakest in the village. And Takezo is of course confused by this because he's like, what do you mean I'm the weakest and the strongest, right? I can beat everybody's ass. But this is the start of one of the core themes of this series, which is that connection is important and that you can't just shut yourself off from the world. Also, I just want to point out that despite bearing no weapons, because Takuan is a monk, he's constantly challenging people, like not physically challenging, but their views, right? He's challenging people like Takezo, like samurai generals or whoever, and he's challenging them on the things that they do and their incompetence and the decisions that they make and why they're actually not what they think or whatever it may be. And he does so fearlessly, even though like any of them could theoretically kill him at any point. And to be honest, it just kind of radiates Sigma Chad energy. So as Musashi is evading the villagers and the samurai, he's hiding out in the woods, and then that's where we meet Tsujikaze Kohei, who's actually the younger brother of Tsujikaze Kenma, the one that they killed defending Oko. So Kohei shows up and he starts a fight with Takezo, and the fight aside, I think that there's actually some very interesting imagery that's going on here. Kohei is compared to the likes of a praying mantis. I believe it was a mantis. He's compared to the like of a mantis who we see capturing a butterfly, which is supposed to be Takezo, because in this moment it is Kohei who got the surprise attack on him. But as the fight progressed and we see Takezo show his strength, it actually switches, and instead of seeing a butterfly, we see a spider. And so now the likeness has switched from there being a predator and a prey to two predators. And I think it's a really interesting way for us to understand how the characters see themselves in this fight, right? Kohei initially shows up believing that he has an easy kill, and then he learns that it's not so easy, right? It's going to be a little bit difficult. But anyway, Kohei leaves because the samurai show up because they want to capture Takezo, and he doesn't want to be a part of any of that. And what's interesting is that the samurai are actually compared to the likes of ants. Meaning that they're basically nothing in comparison to Takezo, which is true because he makes easy work of them. I think what's even more interesting than the imagery or the fight is that throughout the fight, Takezo asks himself a question. He says, I was born into this world and lived in it for 17 years, and for what purpose? And this is the first like really introspective thought that we get from Takezo. And it's interesting because when he's compared to the likes of beasts and monsters and devils, we hear him outwardly accept those names, and he'll just accept them as part of who he is. But I would argue that a devil, a demon, a monster wouldn't be looking for some higher ambition, like some higher purpose other than just fighting for the sake of fighting like people thinks he does. So there's this contradiction between what he's thinking and the outward appearance that he shows the world. Chapter 16 is a continuation of what I was speaking about earlier, about how one of the core themes of this whole series is about connection. In this chapter, Otsu and Takezo come face to face, and we learn that Otsu was abandoned when she was a baby. And so now we understand why she took Matahachi leaving her for another woman so difficult, was because she felt like that she had been abandoned again. And it's in the same chapter where Otsu and Takezo come face to face. Takezo takes a look at his sword and he sees the blood, and the blood starts to yell out to him, calling him a devil and a demon and all these names. And then next thing you know, memories come rushing back of all the people he's killed, the battles he fought. He's also in like this animalistic kind of fight or flight state because he's been out in the woods trying to survive for weeks. And it's only when Otsu runs up and hugs him that the memories fade away and they stop calling him all these names. And he actually drops his sword and he's finally able to relax after essentially surviving in the woods on little to nothing for weeks. And so this is what Takuan means, is that he does not open his heart to people and thus he can never relax. And so besides this one person, Otsu is his childhood friend who was able to get him to relax. Other than that, he needs something. He needs people in order to take the edge off. Now, something interesting that Takuan does is Takezo collapses after he hugs Otsu and he relaxes. And Takuan takes him and strings him up into a tree and kind of just hangs him there. So while Takezo is up there drifting in and out of consciousness, we learn that the reason that he wants to be strong is so that he doesn't have to depend on anyone. And Takuan is directly challenging this belief by stringing him up in that tree because he can't do anything. And so Takuan knowing that Otsu is going to go out there to feed him and try to keep him alive, Takezo has to accept that help. Only people that want to be saved can be saved. And so Takuan is putting him in this position in order to force him to learn to accept help from others and to build connection, or to just die and starve up there. While Takezo is up there drifting in and out of consciousness, we also learn a little bit about his father and who his father was. And we see his father treated him very poorly. He was very cold, didn't show him any love. He would hit him and he would challenge him to duels. And he even said that perhaps one day that Takezo might become stronger than him and maybe he should just kill him now, which is insane to say to your own son. He drew his sword on his own son. So just a really, really bad father, right, all around. His mother also didn't want anything to do with him for whatever reason, and he was told that he should just forget about his mother. And so now you have a story of a boy who had no connection and no love from the two people who you could argue are morally obligated to give him that love and attention and support. And so if you can't get it from them, you don't even begin to think that you should be opening up and trying to give other people a chance, right? And this is really what breeds the Takezo we see today. So while Takezo is hanging from the tree, Tsujikaze Kohei actually shows up again, and he shows up to obviously kill Takezo. But right as he's about to deliver the finishing blow, Takuan actually cuts him down with his mind. And the only equivalent that I can give to this is basically his spiritual pressure is the best in the verse. And as Kohei flees because he feels this intense, I don't know if it's bloodlust or whatever it is, he runs away and he actually says to himself that, he says, I lost. Despite, Takuan never even drawing a blade or anything because he's a monk. And so this actually leads me to believe that Takuan himself at some point was probably a fighter. He was probably a swordsman or someone of the like. And I'm guessing he sees a lot of himself in Takezo. He was probably once just like him before he became a monk, and that's why he's offering his help to him, because otherwise he really has no reason to, unless it's just kind of he sees it as maybe his duty as a monk or something. But I mean, this child is so troubled that many people don't even give him the time of day. And so the only thing I can think of is that Takuan was like him at some point. So Takuan takes Takezo away, which leads me to my favorite chapter out of this arc, which is chapter 21. Takuan takes Takezo over the top of Miyamoto village, and he says to him that it's a beautiful view, and he says that he can overlook his home village while he dies. Takezo, once again, I haven't mentioned it, but throughout this entire time, he's been asking Takuan to just kill him because he wants to die a warrior's death. He lived his whole life cutting people down, and he believed that at some point it was just the natural order of things that he would be cut down, and he didn't want to die any other way. Takuan actually points out the hypocrisy of how Takezo wishes to die his way, yet all the people that he killed, he had no way of ever knowing if that was the way that they wanted to go, right? They were just enemies, or whatever the reason may have been, is that he took somebody's life not knowing if that's how they want it to go. So it's pretty selfish for him to ask that of somebody else. Takuan begins to berate Takezo about his life choices, saying that if you were really, if your whole destiny was just to kill people and then die, you should just be happy regardless. And he's telling him, shout from the heavens, scream, yell, like, I've completed my life, I'm happy, look at me, I'm gonna die after killing other people, right? And so he's telling him to do these things. He's also punching him. And so he's telling him to do these things, and Takezo just can't do it because, like we explored and discussed before, Takezo, he has some other purpose that he's looking for. He wants to know why he's here, and he feels like there's more to it than just fighting and killing other people. And that's pretty much the end of this arc. Takezo comes, he asks himself, does he really deserve to live? And I guess he's going to take the time to figure that out if he really, really does. So in order to give him the motivation to actually go on, Takuan tells him there is no light for those who do not know darkness. And he tells him to live on and endure the shadows, which I think was really nice and probably the boost that he really, really needed. And so overlooking the village, Takezo is dead, and he is from now on known as Miyamoto Musashi, right? Miyamoto from Miyamoto Village, and Musashi, I have no clue because I don't speak the language. This was a long video. I have no idea how long it's going to be after production. I'm assuming it's going to be somewhere in the 30-minute video range, but I really just wanted to dive deep into these characters and tell their story, and I didn't really want to skip over anything because I think that it's such a strong foundation for everything that comes after, for who they become, for who Musashi becomes, for who Matahachi becomes, Otsu even to an extent. And so I really just wanted to give it the time that it deserves. I didn't even get to talk about the art. I didn't get to talk about the paneling or any of the other things that come with reading and reading manga and experiencing this medium. And I'm gonna do all that at a later point. This video is probably dog shit, right? But I've been kind of sitting here and like debating on when I should start forever now. Of course I had to get equipment, right? Microphone, camera, I had to figure out how to do all these things, but even after I had all them, I just kept making excuses like, oh, I'm not good enough yet, or I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And so it's the production's probably terrible, the camera might be terrible, the audio might be terrible, my eye contact with the camera or whatever else it may be is probably very subpar. But I realized that at some point I just kind of have to start, You look back on any first YouTubers, the YouTube videos, at least the ones that let you see anyway, the first ones are probably privated. But you look back on the first videos, they are never anything in comparison to the things that they're producing now. And so hopefully if I keep this going for a very long time, that'll be me. And then maybe this video will be privated, but probably not. I hope not. I hope I don't cringe that hard to the point where I gotta private it. I've been talking at cameras for a while now, so that's really all I have. I don't really know how to close out these videos. My name is Terrence, by the way. I know the YouTube handle probably says Matic. We're not gonna go by that. That's just the handle, that is what it is, because that's my name on like video games and stuff and whatnot. But my name's Terrence, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe. I have no clue when I'm gonna put out my next Vagabond review, but hopefully it's soon. I want to get to work on it soon, and I want to upload it hopefully within the next week of this one being uploaded. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.